So in a nutshell, this recipe just involves cooking some garlic and oil in a pan, then adding in our cooked pasta along with some of the pasta water and stirring to create a delicious and beautifully emulsified sauce. Which is pretty simple, but when you have a recipe that is this simple with so few ingredients, it's especially important to optimize every step as much as possible. So that's exactly what we're going to do today in order to make the ultimate pasta aglio e olio. Now the great thing about this dish is that once you get the hang of it, the timing works out perfectly and you can make it from start to finish in just about 15 minutes. So we'll start by bringing 2 quarts of water, which is about 2 liters, to a boil over high heat. This will be used to boil 8 ounces of pasta, which will end up being 2 pretty hefty sized portions. A lot of people think you should use more water than this to boil the pasta in order to allow the noodles to move around more freely in the pot, but generally you should actually use less water when cooking pasta so that the water ends up with a higher concentration of starch, which is ultimately going to help us to emulsify our sauce later on in the process. As long as you stir the pasta around a few times at the beginning of cooking, you don't really have to worry about it clumping together. Now while that water is heating, we're going to start prepping the garlic, which is one of only 2 ingredients that we need to prep for this recipe. You'll want to use about 8 medium-sized cloves of garlic, and traditionally for pasta aglio e olio, the garlic is sliced thinly, but I prefer to just mince mine because it's a bit easier, plus you end up with more surface area which equates to more flavor. So once you've got your garlic prepped and your water is boiling, season the boiling water with 25 grams of kosher salt, which is about 3 tablespoons if you're using Diamond Crystal kosher salt as I am, but the volume will vary depending on what type of salt you're using. Either way, the water should taste well seasoned but not overly salty. Some people say it should taste as salty as the sea, which sort of works, but that also depends on the assumption that most people underestimate how salty the sea actually is. In reality, the sea is about a 3.5% salt solution, whereas we want about a 1 to 2% salt solution for our pasta water. So next, just toss 8 ounces of spaghetti into the pot, and again, make sure to stir it around a few times during the first minute or 2 so the noodles don't stick to each other. Then boil them until they're al dente or slightly firm to the bite, which should take about 8 minutes. For the pasta, you should ideally be using bronze cut noodles, which have a slightly coarser finish that sauce clings to much better than the more common Teflon cut pastas, which have smoother and shinier surfaces. So the package should say bronze cut or bronze die cut, but you can also tell just by looking at the noodles because they'll have a rougher, almost dusty looking surface. Now as soon as you get that pasta going, set a large skillet over medium-low heat and add a 1/4 cup of high-quality extra virgin olive oil, along with about 3/4 of your minced garlic and 1 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, or more depending on how much spice you like. We're going to wait to add the rest of our garlic until the very end so that we can incorporate both the flavors of the raw garlic and the cooked garlic into our final dish. And it is okay to use a high quality extra virgin olive oil here because we're not going to be heating it enough to cause it to turn bitter, which does often happen when you cook with extra virgin olive oil. So just keep an eye on the garlic as it cooks and stir it around occasionally to ensure even browning. It should be just gently sizzling, and we only want it lightly browned because going any further than that will cause it to become bitter. But if we don't brown it enough, we'll miss out on a lot of depth of flavor, so make sure to keep a close eye on it. Now in the meantime, we'll prepare our last major ingredient, which is the parsley that we're going to stir in at the end to add some freshness and additional flavor to the dish. We'll need about a 1/4 cup of finely chopped parsley, and with parsley you generally just want to use the leaves because that's where the majority of the flavor is. So separate those leaves from the stalks and chop them up very finely, then just set that aside for the time being. Now once the pasta is al dente, remove it from the heat, but don't drain it yet because we'll need to use some of that pasta water. Then as soon as that garlic reaches the perfect golden brown color, turn off the heat and add the rest of your minced garlic to the skillet along with about 2 tablespoons of pasta water and stir vigorously to emulsify the sauce. In addition to helping emulsify the sauce, the pasta water also stops the browning of the garlic and prevents it from burning. Now, using a pair of tongs, transfer your pasta to the skillet along with about another 4 tablespoons of your pasta water, and again stir vigorously to emulsify the sauce until it nicely coats the pasta. I like to use a rubber spatula for this part just because it helps me to incorporate the sauce that gets stuck to the sides of the skillet. Then add your freshly chopped parsley and stir that in as well, and although it's not traditional, I also like to add a few squeezes of fresh lemon juice at this point. Without it, this dish doesn't really have the acidity and zing that I personally like, although it's definitely still great without it. And you can also top it with some freshly grated Parmesan cheese if you like, which again isn't traditional, but it does add a bit of acidity and some nice flavor. So now if you want to learn more about how this dish actually works, you can click right here to see my most recent video about emulsification. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you over there.